That's it. It's one of these two. Doesn't matter if you're doing sales, doesn't matter if you're doing engineering, doesn't matter what you're doing, you're either talking to silicon or talking to carbon. That's it. By then, I had already been studying computer science for a few years, and so I was like, okay, I'm gonna start having to learn how to talk to people. And so I put myself in a very uncomfortable situation of applying to all possible jobs that I was completely unqualified for, such as quantitative trader, investor, and even infrastructure engineer at Stripe, as well as pitching a company. To my surprise, I actually got a final job offer by Stripe and then got into the finals of Bloomberg and a term sheet to start Krea. And now you know which path I chose. But what's important about this is this principle of what will change, what will not change. So I would like to take you on a journey of 3 points in time that I think are particularly interesting for today. The first one is what I call the prehistoric Sumerian bookkeeping. So during the absolute beginnings of humanity, the Sumerian civilization, turns out, was counting grains on clay tablets and being like, okay, how much rice do we have? How many beers do we have? They were literally counting beers. I read the paper, and that's what it said. And what was interesting is that there was a study that showed that there were signs that showed that they had a concept of like subtotaling, totaling, and even double bookkeeping entry, which is a method that was thought to be invented around the 13th century. So it's like, no, actually, they were doing it too. And I was like, what the hell, like, nothing has changed. It's like, it's from clay tablets to Excel to databases, and blockchain is all the same, just a ledger and transactions, and that's it. So then I kept going, which takes us to the second moment in time, which was, I mean, as a generative AI tooling and creativity founder, I am interested in creativity, so I looked a lot into Leonardo da Vinci's life, and I learned that he was like, they had this weird obsession about drawing wrinkles in clothes. Like Verrocchio, which was the master from Da Vinci, would be like, grab like this piece of cloth and just throw it and be like, draw it like with all the shadows. And they would spend years doing this. And so, a second. And so, that made me think like, surely these people were thinking like, oh my God, what's the best pencil to draw human faces? And like, maybe what is the best canvas, right? And what is the best tooling for this type of thing? And it's like, well, at least to one of the most important geniuses in the history of art is just drawing clothes and learning to draw the wrinkles. And finally, the third story I want to tell about is how I discovered that Thomas Edison apparently struggled with a monthly recurring revenue. In the way he did it, he failed rather, is because during the time where everyone was talking about the electrification on the United States, and everything was electricity, and electricity is the new thing, and if you're not doing electricity, you're not going to make it, and these type of things. Well, Thomas Edison was actually trying to sell this thing called electricity, and he was struggling a lot because everyone was like, but what do I want this thing for? And he's like, well, for the lights. So then most of the enterprise contracts were with the government, who was being like, okay, but I'll only pay you at night, and that's it. And then he was trying to sell it in the morning, and he couldn't because he was like, yeah, well, like everyone was like, but why do I care about this thing? Like, I don't need light, I have the sun. Like, why? And there is this paper called The Dynamo and the Computers, which talked about this paradox that was called the productivity paradox. And it talks about how even though there is a revolution, a change that changes everything, the productivity gains are not measurable at all for many decades. And as one Nobel laureate said, Robert Solow, if I recall correctly his name, he said, computers are everywhere except in productivity measures. Which then, I was just thinking that today is like, oh, AI is everywhere except in S&P 500 profitability measures. And so, what does these three stories have in common? What they have in common is that every time there is a primitive change, whether it's a clay tablet or a canvas or, yeah, like tooling to make images, something changes radically, yet the world seems the same. Like I struggle a little bit to get Wi-Fi to come here, and then people are still doing in queues, and I was writing these notes with pen and paper, and I was like, the more things change, the more things stay the same. And so, for everyone in here that is either an individual contributor, such as a marketer, a writer, even software engineers, but also to the managers, and to leadership, and to founders like me, I want you guys to think about why did it take over 50 years for electricity to even show something? Why do we have agents right now that can write code extremely fast, yet our PR reviews still take days, right? And that's because what I think happens is you have a primitive. This primitive then takes time until we develop a vocabulary to refer to the primitive itself, whether it's entry in a clay tablet. So what do you mean by entry and these things? So it takes time to develop a language. After that, a lot of people can now talk about the thing. Now if I say agents, because it's this word that has evolved, you guys may understand better what I mean. But when I was pitching Krea in 2022, no one understood what the hell an LLM was. In fact, even today I get into customer interviews and I say LLM and they're like, what do you mean, the Lululemon brand? What is LLM? So it takes time. These things take time. There's some diffusion that happens. After that diffusion, then we start building systems on top of this new primitive. And then what happens is the cycle repeats itself, a new primitive appears, and then suddenly the whole system doesn't make sense. And that's what happened to Thomas Edison, actually. What happened is everyone had these steam engines and some weird conveyor belts. And I want you guys to think for a moment. How are these people commuting to work? They were going in horses, you know? And so imagine you have this guy preaching you this electricity thing, and all you're thinking about is, I have to clean the shit of the horse, and it's like, I had to park things. Like, it's a very weird world gap, right? And what happened is over time, like the first thing that people did is that, well, wherever we had a steam engine, we're just gonna plug in the electricity thing. And then, okay, it's 10% better, but like, I don't know, just do a better steam engine for that. Like, you don't need electricity for that. But then people start realizing, wait a minute, if I have electricity, I can now, like with a simple cable and whatever, start connecting the whole thing. And now I can put conveyor belts, and suddenly these people that are moving things, they don't need to move things anymore. So suddenly your delivery people, your moving people, there's just no point for them in the factory anymore. But that doesn't mean that you have to lay them off. It's like, these are people, they can do more than just moving boxes. So I feel like the exact same thing is happening. It's like people are like, okay, we used to have these people that make images, well now we plug in the tool, and then everything else stays the same. And the asset provenance stays the same. And like the A/B testing stays the same. And like all of these things stay the same. Like, I don't think this is gonna stay. There is gonna be a whole reorganization, and you have to almost burn it down like the forests, and like for the youth to come over and be like, okay, this is a new way, a new framework of understanding reality that helps us actually achieve what we want from AI. So I can give a few examples of what I have seen personally when I've talked to people at Apple, people at Amazon, architects. And the one that struck me the most interesting one was actually architecture. And I was asking them, I started talking to a friend. I was like, hey, dude, like, why is it that if I go to, say, Hollywood, because I've been to Hollywood and MGM is actually a customer of ours, but like, at first they were like extremely hesitant. Like, no, AI, I'm copyright, I want to kill you, basically. And I was like, but then I talked to the architecture people. And then they're like, oh my God, this is crazy. And now we don't have to do these 3D renders. I would take like 8 hours and we'd have to spend $100,000 just for one project. I can pay you just that for the whole year. And I was like, yeah, 6-figure deal for me. But like, I was like, wow, like why is one person like, gimme, and the other one is like, no. And then I asked them, dude, why do you want my product so much? Like the architects. And I said, well, you see, we're a very old art. That's what he said. So we've seen this happen many times. He said, you know that at first people, if you didn't know how to make like with a ruler, perfect line, they're like, you're not a true architect. You don't know how to make the perfect ruler. And like, oh, you had to use a ruler. It's almost like this handicap thing, like training wheels. You don't know how to make a line, what type of an architect are you? And then of course, that's stupid. And then they made 3D models, or like real models, not like virtual models. And I was like, oh, wow, you just see a blueprint and you don't have the capacity in your head to imagine the building? Like, you don't know how to draw in 3D in your head? What kind of an architect are you? And they just kept going. And I said, oh, you need computers to draw? You need like the little tablet, you cannot just click. And he just kept going until it got to a point where it's like it's another one of those. It's like, we had AutoCAD, we have 3D modeling, we have a computer-generated imagery that allows us to do, I don't know, fluid simulation for the cloud so that they look amazing. So now they see AI as, okay, another one of those, and then they were the first to embrace it. And I was like, why do you think the film industry didn't adopt it? I was like, well, they're very young. They actually come from a revolution itself, which was the camera. So they've not seen that much. I'm thinking about that story because then it helps me understand how we as humans are naturally so afraid of change and how at the same time, if we don't embrace it, then it comes for us. Darwin said it himself, adapt or die. So I don't think it's a coincidence when I see people like Silverside and other brands that like kind of like appear of nowhere and then grow so fast. And I've seen many brands doing the same. That it's kind of like some call them neo AI studios or something like that as well. And it's like, how are they able to adapt and like grow so fast? Like, well, no, they didn't have to adapt. They just kind of like were born in a world and they just grew within that world. But for everyone who comes from an old organization, it's like know that you have to like almost like burn the forest and so that it can grow, because otherwise the whole forest will go down. And so when everyone is telling all of you guys everything's changing, it's disrupting, it's fast, and nothing's gonna be ever the same, I actually would try to tell you the opposite, which is at first most of the things will stay the same. There is going to be one particular thing that is going to change radically. In this case, now we have machines that can predict. That's essentially the change. And you can ask them a question, they can predict an answer, and because they're good predictors, you're like, oh wow, that was so interesting. But everything else is just built on top of this thing. And if we really want to understand how to do better marketing, how to do better sales, how to do better engineering, how to do better management, better emotional self-regulation, and even better preparing for a talk in San Francisco, you have to understand what are the things that will not change. And to give, I guess, some concrete advice on what I did for this talk, as a very small example, was I was thinking, okay, I will still need to talk. I will still need to let people digest their thoughts. And I think the easiest way to think about these things for me is always go to prehistory and be like, what would they do? What would the old masters do? And I was just thinking, oh, we're just kind of like a bunch of humans, hopefully well-fed, just enjoying someone from the tribe about to tell a story. And now we're just paying attention with this little warm fire, and then hopefully this story will resonate, and I'll tell my children. And I was like, there was this guy who was doing AI, was talking about prehistory. And in a way, that's my way of doing marketing, and I think it will work quite well. And I guess to preach what you teach. No PowerPoint, no images, no AI, no nothing. Just a human and a microphone. Just a human and a microphone. And so I please encourage you to find that little drop of sobriety in these very drunken times. Thank you.